3 days. That's how long 23-year-old Bradley Johnson stayed in his gaming chair. 72 straight hours. He barely slept, he barely stood up, energy drinks replaced water, chips replaced meals, every second away from the screen felt like losing. His friends joked that he was chasing gaming history. No one realized that with every passing hour, a silent killer was taking shape inside his body. Then, the match ended. Bradley smiled, stretched his arms, and stood up for the first time in nearly 3 days. One step, then another. Suddenly, he froze. The color drained from his face. He grabbed his chest. He couldn't breathe. He collapsed. Seconds later, his heart stopped. Paramedics fought desperately to bring him back, but no one could explain how a healthy 23-year-old gamer went from celebrating a victory to suffering cardiac arrest less than a minute later. Was it the energy drinks? Was it the sleepless nights? Or did those 72 hours set something far more dangerous in motion? The truth wasn't hiding in the game. It was hiding inside his body. This is Hidden Pathogens.
This is Hidden Pathogens?
Bradley Johnson wasn't addicted to video games. He was 23 years old, worked full-time as an IT support technician in Omaha, Nebraska, and like millions of Americans, gaming was simply how he relaxed after a long week. It was also how he stayed close to his 3 best friends, Vincent, Willie, and Wayne. For months, they'd been counting down to one weekend. A newly released online game had launched a limited-time competitive event with exclusive rewards that would disappear forever once it ended. Miss the event, and you'd never get another chance. Bradley had even taken Monday off work, not because he planned on getting sick, because he planned on winning. Friday night, the 4 friends logged on together. The goal sounded simple: play until they finished the event. But every completed mission unlocked another. Every victory pushed them higher up the leaderboard. Every break meant someone else could pass them. So Bradley stopped taking breaks. He ignored the reminders on his phone telling him to stand up and stretch. Fast food was delivered to his door. Energy drinks replaced water. Empty cans piled up beside his keyboard. One by one, Vincent, Willie, and Wayne logged off to get some sleep. Bradley didn't. When Vincent called Saturday morning, Bradley answered without looking away from the screen. "I'm almost done," he said. He wasn't. By Sunday afternoon, he'd left his chair only long enough to use the bathroom. When he finally stood, his left calf felt unusually tight. His lower back ached. He laughed it off. "Sitting too long," he muttered. "Who wouldn't? Almost everyone has sore muscles after sitting for hours." What Bradley couldn't feel was the silent danger that had been growing deep inside his leg since the marathon began, and with every passing hour, it was getting closer to his heart. Would Bradley notice the warning before it was too late? By Sunday evening, Bradley had almost forgotten what standing felt like. His entire world had shrunk to the glow of a monitor, the sound of his headset, and the next objective waiting on the screen. Outside, the weekend was ending. Inside his apartment, time barely existed. He couldn't remember the last real meal he'd eaten. The stack of empty energy drink cans beside his desk had grown so high they nearly blocked one of his speakers. His phone buzzed. Mom calling. He silenced it. 5 minutes later, it buzzed again. This time, it was Vincent. "Dude, you've been online for almost 3 days. Vincent laughed. "Go take a shower or something." Bradley chuckled. "After this match." It was the same answer he'd been giving for nearly 72 hours. Then something strange happened. As he shifted in his chair, a sharp cramp shot through his left calf. He rubbed the muscle. Must be dehydrated. He opened another energy drink instead of a bottle of water. A few minutes later, the pain faded. He forgot about it. The match continued. Another hour passed. Then another. By late Sunday night, Bradley finally saw the message he'd been waiting for. Event complete. He'd done it. The exclusive rewards were his. He leaned back and smiled. Finally, he removed his headset. The room was silent for the first time in days. He stretched both arms over his head. His joints cracked. Then he pushed himself out of the chair. The tightness in his left leg was worse now. It felt heavy. Almost numb, he took a slow step toward the kitchen, then another. Halfway across the room, he suddenly stopped. His breathing became strangely fast. His heart began pounding so hard he could hear it. A cold wave rushed through his body. He looked around the apartment, confused. Something was terribly wrong. But nothing around him had changed, so why did it suddenly feel like his body was shutting down? Here is what was happening inside Bradley's body. It began long before he grabbed his chest, long before he struggled to breathe, long before his heart stopped. The moment Bradley settled into his chair for what he thought would be just one long gaming session, the blood in his legs began moving more slowly. Normally, every time you walk, stretch, or even flex your calf muscles, those muscles squeeze the deep veins in your legs like tiny pumps, pushing blood back toward your heart. Doctors sometimes call the calf muscles the body's second heart, but Bradley wasn't walking. He wasn't stretching. For nearly 72 hours, his legs barely moved. Hour after hour, blood continued to pool inside the deep veins of his left calf. As the blood slowed, platelets and clotting proteins had more time to stick together. What should have remained a smooth-flowing stream slowly transformed into something far more dangerous, a blood clot. At first, it was tiny. Bradley couldn't feel it. There was no alarm, no warning, no pain strong enough to make him stop playing. As the hours passed, the clot grew larger. Each minute he remained seated gave it another chance to collect more blood cells and more fibrin, the protein that acts like a biological net, trapping cells together until the clot became stronger and more stable. Inside his apartment, Bradley was focused on winning a game. Inside his leg, his body was building something that could kill him. The frightening part, his body wasn't making a mistake. Blood clots are one of the body's most important survival mechanisms. Without them, even a small cut could become life-threatening. The problem is where a clot forms. When it develops inside a deep vein instead of over a wound, it can become a silent weapon against the person it's supposed to protect. By Sunday night, the clot had grown large enough to partially block blood flow through the vein in Bradley's calf. That explained the tightness he felt when he finally stood. But the real danger wasn't the clot staying where it was. It was what could happen the moment it moved. One sudden movement, one stretch, one walk across the room, and a piece of that clot could break free. If it did, it would begin a journey through Bradley's bloodstream that would take only seconds. A journey that would end with every breath becoming a fight for survival. The terrifying part? Bradley had absolutely no idea any of this was happening. And in just a few moments, his body was about to make the deadliest move of the entire weekend. Bradley had no idea he was carrying a deadly blood clot. To him, the weekend was finally over. The words, "Event complete," still glowed across his monitor. He smiled. 72 hours. He'd actually done it. He pulled off his headset and stretched for the first time in nearly 3 days. His muscles ached. His left calf still felt unusually tight. He barely noticed. He was already thinking about taking a shower, eating a real meal, and getting 12 straight hours of sleep. He pushed his chair back. Then he stood up. For one brief moment, everything felt normal. He took his first step, then another. Suddenly, a crushing pressure exploded across his chest. Bradley stopped. He tried to inhale. Almost nothing came in. His heart slammed violently against his ribs, pounding faster with every desperate beat. "What?" His voice barely escaped. He grabbed the kitchen counter. His legs trembled. The room spun around him. At that exact moment, a piece of the blood clot that had silently formed inside the deep veins of his left leg broke free. Carried by the rushing current of his bloodstream, it raced through the large veins in his body, entered the right side of his heart, and was pumped directly into the arteries of his lungs. Seconds later, it became lodged. The blockage was sudden, complete. Blood could no longer flow normally through part of his lungs. His oxygen levels plummeted. His heart tried to compensate by beating even harder, but no matter how fast it pumped, it couldn't force blood through the obstruction. Bradley gasped again. Still no air. His fingertips began to tingle. His vision narrowed until the edges of the room faded into darkness. Every instinct screamed for him to run, to call for help, to do something. But his body was shutting down faster than his mind could understand. He reached for his phone. His fingers missed. The device slipped from the edge of the desk and crashed onto the floor. Bradley followed it. His knees buckled. He collapsed onto the hardwood floor, struggling for one final breath. Then, everything went still. Bradley's heart had stopped. And with every second that passed, the damage inside his body was becoming harder to reverse. Would anyone find him before those seconds became minutes? Vincent stared at his phone. 3 missed calls. That wasn't like Bradley. During the entire tournament, Bradley had answered almost every message within minutes, even in the middle of a match. Now, nothing. Vincent tried calling again. The phone rang. No answer. He opened the game's voice chat. Silence. Bradley's character was still online. The victory screen remained frozen, but Bradley wasn't saying a word. A knot formed in Vincent's stomach. Something felt wrong. He grabbed his keys and drove straight to Bradley's apartment. Less than 20 minutes later, he pulled into the parking lot. Bradley's car was still outside. Lights glowed through the apartment window. His computer monitor was still shining. Vincent knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. He tried the doorknob. It turned. Bradley? Silence. The familiar sound of the computer's cooling fans filled the apartment. The game was still running. An unfinished can of energy drink sat beside the keyboard. Half-eaten food remained on the desk. The room looked exactly as Bradley had left it. Except, Bradley wasn't in his chair. He was lying face down on the hardwood floor, completely motionless. Bradley! Vincent sprinted across the room and rolled him onto his back. His skin was pale. His lips had begun turning blue. Vincent shook him. No response. Bradley, wake up. Nothing. His chest wasn't moving. Vincent pressed 2 trembling fingers against Bradley's neck. He couldn't find a pulse. His own heart began racing. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My friend, he's not breathing. The dispatcher immediately began asking questions. Is he awake? No. Is he breathing normally? I don't think so. Listen to me carefully, the dispatcher said. Help is on the way. I need you to start chest compressions immediately. Vincent had never performed CPR before. His hands shook as he locked them together over the center of Bradley's chest. Push hard, he pushed. Push fast, he pushed again. 1 compression, then another, then another. Each one forced a small amount of blood through Bradley's body, delivering just enough oxygen to keep his brain alive while they waited for paramedics. Every second felt like an hour. Finally, sirens echoed outside. Paramedics rushed through the apartment, carrying a cardiac monitor, oxygen equipment, and emergency medications. One of them checked Bradley's pulse. Nothing. Another attached the monitor pads to his chest. The room fell silent as everyone looked at the screen. Then, a paramedic spoke 3 words that made everyone's blood run cold. He's in cardiac arrest. But the biggest mystery wasn't that Bradley's heart had stopped. It was why. How could a healthy 23-year-old gamer suffer sudden cardiac arrest moments after finishing a video game? The answer wouldn't be found in his heart. It would be found somewhere no one had thought to look. The ambulance arrived at the emergency department with its lights still flashing. Doctors and nurses were already waiting. Bradley was rushed into the resuscitation room while another team continued chest compressions. 23-year-old male, one paramedic reported. Witnessed cardiac arrest, CPR started by a friend, no known medical history. The room immediately came alive. One doctor managed Bradley's airway. Another inserted IV lines. A nurse administered emergency medications. Another prepared the defibrillator in case a shockable rhythm appeared. Every second mattered. After several long minutes, a pulse. We've got a pulse. The room paused for only a moment before everyone returned to work. Restarting Bradley's heart was only the beginning. Now they had to figure out why it had stopped. His parents arrived minutes later. His mother was in tears. "There has to be some mistake," she said. "He's only 23. The emergency physician asked the questions every family dreads. Does he have a heart condition? No. Any history of seizures? No. Does he use drugs? No. Any medications? Nothing. The answers only deepen the mystery. A healthy young man shouldn't suffer sudden cardiac arrest without a reason. The first tests came back. His blood sugar was normal. There were no signs of major trauma. A brain scan showed no evidence of a massive bleed. An electrocardiogram didn't point to an obvious heart attack. The emergency team began considering every possibility: a hidden heart condition, a dangerous heart rhythm disorder, a drug overdose, an undiagnosed genetic disease. One possibility after another was discussed. None of them completely fit. Then, one of the emergency physicians noticed something almost everyone else had overlooked. As the nurses removed Bradley's clothing for a full examination, his left calf looked slightly larger than his right. It wasn't dramatic, just enough to catch an experienced eye. The doctor gently pressed on the swollen calf. It felt unusually firm. "Did anyone notice this before?" he asked. The room fell quiet. No one answered. The swollen leg suddenly seemed far more important than anyone had realized. But how could a sore calf possibly explain why a healthy young man's heart had stopped? The answer to that question would change the entire investigation. Before we continue, if you're fascinated by real medical mysteries like this, share this video and subscribe to this channel. And if you value these videos, there's a free link in the description and pinned comment that helps support the channel. Even if you've clicked it before, endeavor to click on it again with every new video you watch from this channel. Every bit of click helps us continue researching and telling these stories, and it's completely free. Now, let's continue. The emergency physician couldn't stop looking at Bradley's swollen left calf. It wasn't dramatically larger than the other leg. In fact, most people would never have noticed the difference. But years of experience had taught him something important. Sometimes the smallest clues solve the biggest mysteries. He looked back at the cardiac monitor, then at Bradley's leg, then back again. "How long was he sitting before this happened?" he asked. Bradley's parents looked at each other. His mother wiped away her tears. "He'd been playing video games all weekend." His father nodded. His friend said, "Almost 3 days?" The physician's expression changed. 72 hours? Yes. For the first time that night, the scattered pieces of the puzzle began fitting together. He turned toward the trauma team. "I want an emergency CT pulmonary angiogram, and order an ultrasound of his left leg." Within minutes, Bradley was rushed to the imaging department. His parents waited outside in silence. Neither of them understood what the doctors were looking for. Several tense minutes later, the scans appeared on the monitor. The radiologist leaned closer. There it is. A large blood clot completely blocked one of the major arteries supplying Bradley's lungs. The room went quiet. The emergency physician wasn't surprised anymore. He had expected to find it. But the ultrasound revealed something even more important. Deep inside Bradley's left calf, the vein was no longer compressible. Dark clot filled the vessel where blood should have been flowing freely. The source had finally been found. Bradley hadn't suffered a heart attack. He hadn't overdosed. He didn't have a hidden genetic heart disease. The real danger had started nearly 3 days earlier. Inside the deep veins of his leg, the emergency physician looked at Bradley's parents. "He has something called a deep vein thrombosis," he explained. "A piece of that clot broke away and traveled to his lungs. It blocked the blood flow so suddenly that his heart could no longer pump effectively." His mother covered her mouth. "From sitting?" The doctor nodded. "Prolonged immobility can allow blood to pool inside the deep veins of the legs. In rare cases, that blood forms a clot. If part of the clot breaks free, it can travel through the heart and become trapped inside the lungs." He paused. "There have been documented cases after marathon gaming sessions." The room became silent once again. Bradley's parents struggled to understand how something as ordinary as sitting in front of a computer could nearly cost their son his life. But although the doctors had finally solved the mystery, Bradley was still unconscious, and identifying the cause was only the beginning. Could they save him before the damage became permanent? The mystery had finally been solved. Bradley wasn't dying because of a hidden heart disease. He wasn't suffering from a drug overdose. And he hadn't been born with a rare genetic condition. A blood clot that had silently formed in his leg during 72 hours of near-continuous sitting had broken free, traveled through his bloodstream, and become lodged inside the arteries of his lungs. Now the doctors had a diagnosis. But they also had a new problem. The clot was still there. Every second it remained lodged inside Bradley's lungs, forced his heart to work against an obstruction it was never designed to overcome. The right side of the heart, which normally pumps blood into the lungs with relatively little effort, was suddenly pushing against intense resistance. With every heartbeat, pressure continued to build. If that pressure became too great, the heart itself could begin to fail. The intensive care physician gathered Bradley's parents outside the room. "We know what's causing this," she said, "but he's still in critical condition." She explained that Bradley had suffered what doctors call a massive pulmonary embolism, one severe enough to stop his heart. Simply restarting his heartbeat wasn't enough. The blockage had to be treated immediately. Normally, doctors treat dangerous blood clots with powerful blood-thinning medications called anticoagulants. These drugs don't instantly dissolve a clot. Instead, they stop it from growing while the body's own natural systems slowly break it down. But Bradley's case wasn't normal. His heart had already stopped. Waiting hours, or even days, for the clot to dissolve naturally could cost him his life. The medical team had to make a decision. Fast. One option was a powerful clot-busting medication known as a thrombolytic. Unlike standard blood thinners, this drug could rapidly break apart the clot-blocking blood flow to Bradley's lungs. But there was a catch. It carried a serious risk. The same medication capable of saving Bradley's life could also trigger catastrophic bleeding, including bleeding inside the brain. The room fell silent. There were no perfect choices. Treat the clot and risk a life-threatening hemorrhage. Wait too long, and his heart might never recover. The physicians reviewed every scan, every blood test, every minute that had passed since Bradley collapsed. Finally, the lead critical care physician looked at the team. "We don't have time to wait." The medication was prepared. As it slowly entered Bradley's bloodstream, everyone in the room knew the next few hours would determine whether he lived or died. The clot had nearly taken his life once already. Now the doctors were about to find out if they could stop it before it struck again. Would the treatment save Bradley? Or would its own deadly risks become the next battle for his life? The clot-busting medication disappeared into Bradley's bloodstream. Now, everyone waited. Inside the intensive care unit, every pair of eyes was fixed on the monitors. A ventilator breathed for Bradley. Medications kept his blood pressure from crashing. Machines measured every heartbeat, every breath, every tiny change inside his body. The treatment had one goal: break apart the clot before it caused even more damage. For a while, there were small signs of hope. Blood began flowing through parts of Bradley's lungs that had been cut off only hours earlier. His oxygen levels improved slightly. The pressure on the right side of his heart finally began to ease. One of the younger nurses smiled. Maybe he's going to make it. The attending physician didn't answer. He had treated too many cardiac arrest patients to celebrate too soon. Restarting a heart was only one battle. Saving the brain was another. Although Bradley's circulation had been restored, his body had already endured a devastating period without enough oxygen. The longer the brain is deprived of oxygen, the more brain cells begin to die. Unlike many other tissues in the body, those cells rarely recover. Over the next several hours, Bradley remained completely unresponsive. The sedation medications were gradually reduced. The ICU team waited. No movement. They called his name, nothing. They gently applied painful stimulation to see if he would react. Still nothing. His pupils responded only weakly to light. The room grew quieter. The hope everyone had felt only hours earlier slowly began to fade. The lead intensivist ordered another brain scan. When the images appeared on the screen, no one spoke. The scan showed widespread swelling caused by the prolonged lack of oxygen during Bradley's cardiac arrest. His brain was beginning to shut down. The physician removed his glasses and took a slow breath. This was the outcome every critical care doctor fears. Not because they had missed the diagnosis, not because they had chosen the wrong treatment, but because sometimes, even when everything is done correctly, the damage has already gone too far. He walked into the family consultation room where Bradley's parents had been waiting all night. His mother stood before he said a word. "Is he waking up?" The physician's expression told her the answer before he spoke. "We were able to treat the clot. We were able to restart his heart. But his brain went too long without enough oxygen." He paused. "The injury is catastrophic." The room fell silent. His father slowly lowered his head into his hands. His mother began to cry. The physician wished he had different words to say. He didn't. Bradley's heart had been saved, but the person his parents knew was slipping beyond the reach of medicine, and the hardest conversation of all was about to begin. Morning came, but inside the intensive care unit, time no longer seemed to exist. Bradley's heart was still beating. The ventilator still rose and fell with quiet precision. The monitors continued their steady rhythm. To anyone walking past the room, it might have looked as though he was simply asleep. But the doctors knew the truth. The lead intensivist quietly entered the room, carrying the results of Bradley's latest neurological examinations. He pulled up a chair beside Bradley's parents. His voice was calm, gentle, measured. "We've repeated the examinations. We've treated the blood clot. We've supported his heart. We've done everything modern medicine can do." He paused. But Bradley suffered a catastrophic hypoxic brain injury when his heart stopped. The damage is irreversible. The room became unbearably still. His mother slowly covered her mouth. His father lowered his head, unable to look away from his son. No one cried at first. Sometimes, the deepest grief arrives in complete silence. The physician continued. "The machines can keep his heart beating, but they cannot bring back the parts of his brain that have been permanently injured." There was nothing left to fix, nothing left to reverse. Only one impossible decision remained. Hours passed. Bradley's family gathered around his bedside. His younger sister placed an old photograph on the blanket. It showed Bradley smiling after catching his very first fish, proudly holding it toward the camera with both hands. His mother gently brushed the hair from his forehead. "You always promised you'd call me after your tournaments," she whispered. "I've been waiting for that call." His father rested a trembling hand on Bradley's shoulder. "You were the best son I could have asked for." For a moment, Bradley's fingers moved ever so slightly. His mother looked up instantly. Bradley? Hope flashed across every face in the room. The physician stepped closer. His expression never changed. "I'm so sorry," he said softly. "That's a spinal reflex. He isn't suffering." The hope disappeared as quietly as it had come. After one final conversation, Bradley's parents made the hardest decision of their lives. They asked the medical team to remove the machines that were keeping his body alive. The ventilator was disconnected. The medications supporting his blood pressure were stopped. His family never let go of his hands. The heart monitor continued its familiar rhythm. Beep, beep, a little slower. Beep, longer silence. His mother leaned forward and kissed his forehead. "We love you." The monitor sounded one final beat. Then, silence. A single unbroken tone filled the room. The physician looked at the clock. Time of death. He quietly announced the hour. Bradley Johnson was 23 years old. 72 hours earlier, he had sat down in front of his computer, thinking he was beginning another gaming marathon. He never imagined he was beginning the final weekend of his life. The blood clot that took Bradley's life wasn't caused by the game itself. It was caused by something far more ordinary. Hours upon hours of sitting almost completely still. And the most heartbreaking part, almost all of it, was preventable. So how can something as simple as sitting become a deadly medical emergency? And how can you make sure it never happens to you? Bradley's story is heartbreaking, but it isn't unique. Doctors have seen similar tragedies in office workers, long-haul truck drivers, frequent airline passengers, and even people who spent days almost completely motionless playing video games. The condition has become known as e-thrombosis. The name was first used to describe dangerous blood clots linked to prolonged computer use. Today, doctors recognize that the real danger isn't the computer, or the video game, or the office chair. It's prolonged immobility. Under normal circumstances, the muscles in your legs act like a second heart. Every time you walk, climb stairs, or even flex your calves, those muscles squeeze the deep veins in your legs, pushing blood back toward your heart. But when you remain seated for hours without moving, that pumping system slows dramatically. Blood begins to pool inside the deep veins of the legs. The slower blood moves, the greater the chance that it can begin to clot. Most of the time, these clots remain small or never form at all. But in rare cases, they continue growing silently for hours or even days. Many people don't notice anything unusual. Some experience mild calf pain. Others notice swelling in one leg, a feeling of tightness, warmth, or tenderness that seems like nothing more than a muscle strain. Those symptoms are easy to ignore. Bradley ignored them too. The real danger begins when part of that clot breaks away. Once it enters the bloodstream, it travels through the large veins into the right side of the heart. From there, it's pumped directly into the lungs. If the clot becomes lodged inside a pulmonary artery, blood can no longer flow normally through part of the lungs. Doctors call this a pulmonary embolism. Small pulmonary embolisms can sometimes cause chest pain, shortness of breath, or coughing. Large ones can overwhelm the heart within minutes. In the most severe cases, like Bradley's, the heart suddenly can no longer pump enough blood to keep the body alive. Cardiac arrest can follow. Fortunately, cases like Bradley's are rare. Millions of people play video games, work at computers, and travel long distances without ever developing a dangerous blood clot. But rare doesn't mean impossible. The risk becomes higher when prolonged sitting is combined with other factors such as dehydration, obesity, smoking, certain inherited clotting disorders, recent surgery, some medications, or a previous history of blood clots. The good news is that simple habits can make a meaningful difference. Stand up every hour or two, walk around for a few minutes, stretch your legs, stay well hydrated, and never ignore persistent swelling, pain, or tenderness in one leg, especially if it's followed by sudden chest pain or difficulty breathing. Those symptoms deserve immediate medical attention, because as Bradley's story reminds us, the deadliest medical emergencies are not always the loudest. Sometimes, they begin in complete silence. 72 hours. That's all it took. Not for a virus to spread, not for cancer to grow, not for years of unhealthy living to catch up with someone. Just 72 hours of sitting almost completely still. Bradley never believed he was taking a dangerous risk. He wasn't climbing a mountain. He wasn't skydiving. He wasn't doing anything most people would consider life-threatening. He was doing something millions of people do every single day. He was playing video games. The game didn't kill him. The computer didn't kill him. Even the chair didn't kill him. The real danger was the invisible blood clot that formed while his body remained almost completely motionless for days. And Bradley isn't the only person this can happen to. Doctors have reported dangerous blood clots in office workers spending long days at a desk, long-haul truck drivers crossing the country, frequent airline passengers on international flights, programmers working through deadlines, college students studying through the night. Anyone who remains seated for prolonged periods without moving can increase their risk, especially when other risk factors are present. The good news is that tragedies like Bradley's are uncommon, and in many cases, they're preventable. Minutes can make the difference between life and death. Bradley thought the biggest challenge that weekend would be winning one more match. He never realized his greatest opponent wasn't on the screen. It was a blood clot silently growing inside his leg, one that gave almost no warning before it took everything. If Bradley's story changes the way even one person thinks about prolonged sitting, if one person gets up to stretch, if one person recognizes the warning signs early enough to seek help, then his story may do what he no longer had the chance to do: save a life. Because sometimes, the deadliest enemies aren't the ones you can see. They're the ones growing silently inside you. And sometimes, the most important move you'll make is simply standing up. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. These stories take a lot of research to put together. If you'd like to support the channel, you'll find a free link in the description and pinned comment. Checking it out helps support future videos. Even if you've clicked it before, endeavor to click on it again on every new video you watch from this channel. Every click allows us to keep bringing these cases to the channel. And it's completely free. If you learned something from this case, like, share, and subscribe for more real medical stories. And if you chose not to subscribe, leave a comment and tell me what would make these videos better. I read far more comments than you might think. This is Hidden Pathogens. I'll see you in the next diagnosis. Good night.